First of all, Rishi Sunak faces a fight of his premiership tonight with a key vote on his flagship Rwanda plan.
So far, 2 of his deputy chairs have quit over his Stop the Boats policy, and dozens of Rebel MPs signed amendments aimed at toughening the legislation.
The illegal migration minister, Michael Tomlinson, joins us now from Westminster. Good morning, Mr Tomlinson.
Good morning.
Could you just kind of explain to us, if, as I know you hope and we all expect, the legislation goes through the House of Commons tonight and becomes law, can you just give us the timetable for what then happens to actually get people onto a plane to Rwanda? Do you know when that will happen? Do you know where the plane will fly from? Have you identified the particular individuals who you would expect? Will they be the people who were originally going on the first plane? Could you just explain to us what will happen over the next few weeks?
All that planning and processing is going on. What will happen over the next few weeks is we'll have the debates, first of all, in the House of Commons, then they will go to the House of Lords in the usual parliamentary process. And as soon as the bill receives royal assent, so when it passes through both houses and receives that royal assent, then you will see that operationalisation kicking in. We'll make sure that it works and the planes will be taking off. And that work is happening and will happen. But, Ed, respectfully, you'll know that there is a big debate today. There is the committee stage and the third reading, if there are no amendments later on this evening. And that's where my focus and that's where my discussions focus and resolve are right at the moment.
And are you confident, if the bill goes through unamended and goes through the Lords, are you confident that a UK judge will then not decide to hold up the process?
Yes, I am. The law as drafted, the legislation is very clear. And where Parliament, as you know, where Parliament has clearly and unambiguously set out what should happen, then the courts do follow that. And we've seen that throughout. That's the orthodox constitutional position. We saw that in the most recent Supreme Court ruling. There was the famous paragraph 144 that set out that orthodox position. And the legislation is clear. And we'll hear a bit more about that this afternoon. But it's clear that it's for ministers to decide and not for the courts to decide, and that's what will happen.
I ask, Alex Chalk, the Lord Chancellor, announced plans to expand court capacity and recruit new judges to fast-track asylum appeals under the Rwanda Bill. 150 judges could be brought in to deal with cases. When there are sexual assault and rape cases which are taking years to come to court, where have you suddenly found 150 judges to fast-track these asylum cases?
Well, this announcement yesterday was in relation to the upper tribunal, and it's clear that it's for the judiciary to allocate their resources, but the Lord Chancellor did set out that the work that was set out in the Illegal Migration Act, this was the bill that was passed last July, that set out a fast-tracked process, and that this is part of that process that will happen. So it's not just...
Why are suddenly these asylum cases being fast-tracked when rape cases are not being fast-tracked?
Well, that's not quite right. You are right to mention the backlog. That is something that the Lord Chancellor is determined to tackle. There are many reasons for that.
Not as determined, apparently, as to tackle these asylum cases in order to get this Rwanda bill through Parliament in the face of opposition from your own party. I mean, this came as a bit of surprise. I'm sorry, this came as a bit of a surprise to the most senior judge in England and Wales, the Lady Chief Justice Sue Carr. Let's have a listen to what she had to say.
Parliament has legislated. We, the judiciary, have acted in preparation for that legislation. But to be absolutely clear, matters of deployment of judges, the allocation of work for judges, and the use of courtrooms is exclusively a matter for the judiciary, and more specifically, a matter for myself and the senior president of the tribunals. And it's really important, Chair, that people understand that clear division.
Well, that's a slap on the wrist, isn't it? It's got nothing to do with you guys. You don't decide that 150 judges are going to be reallocated to asylum cases.
Well, respectfully, I agree entirely with what the Lady Chief Justice said, and you would expect that because I'm a former law officer, a former Solicitor General. And I listened carefully and I saw carefully what the Lord Chancellor said as well. And the Lady Chief is right. It is for Parliament to legislate. The judiciary will then respond to that legislation. The legislation sets out an accelerated timetable, and that's exactly what the judiciary are and will respond to. And I agree entirely with what the Lady Chief Justice said.
So what do you say to everybody else? As we know, justice delayed is justice denied. Anybody who's been waiting for their case to come to court, what do you say about the prioritisation in the government's mind of asylum cases over, for instance, a rape trial?
I don't say it's one versus the other. I say it's both. And if you listen and see what the Lord Chancellor has done to ensure that trials are accelerated and expedited, you're right, there is a backlog. There are reasons for that, such as COVID, and we saw other reasons as well. But the Lord Chancellor is tackling that. It's not an either-or, it is a both. And I know that the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State is determined to tackle both. And what we saw yesterday was part of the implementation of this plan, but it doesn't take away from what else is going on across government.
OK. All right, Mr Tomlinson, thanks very much indeed. And with respect, I would say it is either-or because a judge can only be in one place at one time. But thank you very much.
Well, that's not quite right, because we're talking about two different things. There's an upper-tier immigration tribunal, and then there are judges that sit in our criminal courts. They are two different things, respectfully.
And as the Lady Chief Justice said, that's for her to decide. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.